Hi everyone. So today in IP we're going to be doing the team check-in exercise. It's about midway through the term and it's a really good time to kind of regroup, reassess where we've been, where we need to go, and what we need to do to be as effective as we possibly can be in the future and have the most fun possible. That's always important too. So what are the goals for today? First and foremost, we want you to use this opportunity to have a discussion and make some plans that are going to improve your team's performance, and then again also improve your experiences going forward as well. So how are you going to get there? Well, in order to figure out how you need to improve, you have to know what the root drivers of your current level of effectiveness have been to date. So we are going to go through an exercise where you guys are discussing together to come to a better understanding as a group, as a whole, of the root drivers of both positive and negative aspects of your effectiveness. So, for most teams, you're very likely to have some things that are going fantastically well that you want to continue, and then some things that you need to work on and maybe readjust to make some changes. So we want to give you the opportunity to fully discuss both of those and to make action plans that will address your understanding of what the root drivers of your performance to date have been. So what do you need today? There are three major things that you need, and I'll add an optional fourth. So first and foremost, you need a copy of that team check-in survey report. So once 3 teammates had done that survey on Qualtrics, gathering your team perceptions, you were able to download the report. The instructions are here. I think that you have them in front of you as well. So you need that report so that everybody's looking over the same data. You also need the worksheet that you're going to be completing as a deliverable for IP this week. And then finally, you need a copy of your team's charter. What if somebody's not here today? That is definitely less than an ideal situation, but we have to go with what we have. So obviously proceed in starting to have your discussion. It may be interesting to talk about whether it is meaningful that that person is not in class today. So if this is a repeated issue, that's actually something worth discussing. And if it is a repeated issue, it's definitely something worth discussing in the group once you have that member back, right? If the person just happens to be sick, either way, we would say most teams are going to start this discussion in class today and are going to need to meet after class to finish up the worksheet. We strongly encourage you to make sure that when you meet after class, you have every single member of your team to do that. The worksheet itself has 4 major parts. The beginning part is the quickest. That is, pull out your team charter and refresh your memory of what you actually plan to do at the beginning of the term together. You also want to actually review the pieces of your survey results report that discusses whether you have goal clarity, right? That may be the most important step to start off with. Do we all know what we're doing with IP? Are we in agreement in terms of what the task is and what our standards are and what we're aiming for in terms of performance and what we value the most, right? The second part is where you really get into analysis. And this should be the meat of your discussion today, where you really get into deeply understanding perceptions of what is working to date and what has not been working to date and why those things may or may not be working. So once you get through that, we're going to ask you to step back to the high level and say, what's the most important thing that you took away from this discussion? And then from there, make some concrete plans. We really want you to get specific and actionable here about what you want to actually continue doing and what you want to change about what's been going on. And from there, you may also want to amend your team charter as necessary. So the hardest part of what you're doing here today, it may be easy to just complete a worksheet and turn it in, right? There's one thing that, you can complete something, but is it really going to be useful? To the extent that this is useful, you are going to need to have some candid discussions. And these may be some hard discussions, right, when it comes to things that are not working so well. It can be awkward to know where to start with discussions like this of negative aspects of of team dynamics and team performance to date. So how do you determine which items are the most interesting for your team? Well, you want to look at means. So what are the highest scores? Those are indications of things that are going really well. What are the lowest scores, right? And there are some, negative items where higher scores on those items would indicate a problem. You also want to look at standard deviations. Remember what you've learned in statistics. This is an opportunity to apply that. So high standard deviations indicate that there are differences in perceptions on that particular item. And that may clue you into a topic really worth discussing. So this was a team from last year, fall 2011, their sophomore fall IP project. And I just highlighted some things that if I were this team, I would be looking at as well. So one is, what is a high standard deviation? So you see I've highlighted a standard deviation of 1.92. Usually any standard deviation of higher than 1.5 for sure indicates something worth discussing, because people really do have differences of opinion. Remember, again, I'm refreshing your memory from statistics that the majority of responses are going to be between one standard deviation above and below the mean. So the higher that standard deviation number is, the bigger the range. So this team's highest score was a 6.4 with a 0.5 standard deviation, meaning that just about everybody agrees, all 5 people, that everyone really is given the chance to speak and be heard, which is a wonderful thing. That is a really important foundational aspect of a successful team. Because this is one that we see more commonly than we'd like to see, right? But it's a common problem in teams regardless of context. So in this item, one of their very lowest scores is perceptions of whether there is a significant free rider problem on this team, where at least one team member is not contributing their fair share. So in this, the mean score was 3.8. It's actually below 4. And this is, again, a 7-point scale, indicating that there's more agreement or indicating that there's less agreement about this, right? Because this is a negatively worded item. And so the standard deviation, though, is huge. It's actually over 2 in this case. So the perceptions are all over the board. So instead of focusing just on the negative emotion, we'd like to encourage you to really think about, again, trying to look for the root causes. So first of all, they may not know how you're feeling, right? They may not realize that they're not meeting expectations of the team. In many cases, a lot of you are, because you are so nice, you sort of toil away quietly and sort of let your frustration build, but haven't been comfortable enough actually addressing explicitly the problem with the person directly, right? So that's step number 1, and this may be a great opportunity to do that. A structural thing with your team, look back at your charter and how well you've been executing your charter. Also try to be curious about what else might be driving this person's lack of engagement or lack of motivation. For a lot of students, what we found is something somewhat surprising, right? So some of the students on your team that are not participating to full max may actually feel like they're not as good in some way as the other team members and are actually afraid of doing too much work because they're afraid that their work won't be up to the standards of the rest of the team. So they just don't end up doing it at all, right? They let somebody else do it. And so there may be things that you can do to address the person's level of confidence and make them feel like you really do value what they have to contribute. There may, of course, also be other potential personal issues that you are not aware of. So I would start by asking the person, we've noticed we haven't been getting as much from you as we would hope. We know that you're capable of a lot more, and we're missing out as a team by not having your contribution. The final thing is there are often clashes in teams around pacing. So there's always the student that wants to get things done super early, right? And then the student who gets things done really well but doesn't get them done until the very end, right? Right at the midnight hour when the deadline is due. And what happens in a lot of cases is that student that really wants to get things done early, they end up just taking over the work because they're so afraid that it won't get done and won't get done to a high enough quality. One final note, and that is, of course, where all of these discussion threads lead nowhere, there is obviously the case where you feel like, well, we've sussed out all the potential explanations and I think the student just really isn't into this project and really doesn't care about the rest of the team, right? We hope that's very rare. But in the case where that happens, we just have a few reminders for everyone, both the student in question and the team. So we care a lot about fairness. And there will be grade consequences. This is a reminder back from the kickoff, and you should have heard this a few times in your syllabi and in IP. That there will be grade consequences. So remember the peer evaluation factor. So all team scores in IP, and there are some parts of other subjects that may be affected by the peer evaluation factor also. So all team scores in IP will be multiplied by this factor that's driven by your end of term peer assessments. If everybody agrees on your team, and we professors look at the teammate ratings with an educated eye, we kind of know what's going on in the teams. We actually know when there's a free rider problem a lot of the time ourselves. So we're able to sort through any noise that there may be in the peer evaluation data as well. And we use our judgment in combination with the peer assessments to come up with this peer evaluation factor. If you're in a situation where you pretty much have to write off somebody in the team, you can at least rest assured that there will be justice. So that team member will not get the same grade that you guys are getting. And if you are at that point, we encourage you to remember that the show must go on. Either way, there may be some other sensitive discussions and the same general principles apply. You want to try to keep emotions out of it and focus on solving the problem and focus on trying to get yourselves to a place where you can have the most positive end of the term as possible. So you are halfway there. You're about on the 50-yard line. You want a touchdown at the end of the term with your presentations and your final reports. This is an opportunity to help you guys regroup to get there. I hope that you'll have fun with it. I hope you'll learn something from it, both from the results of the worksheet and also from the process of this exercise. And of course, your IP professors are there to help you along the way, as well as your management professors next week. Good luck and have fun. Take care.